A Healer's Gift. Adventures of Broad. Book 1. Adventures on Broad. Written by Tao Wong. Narrated by Eric Martin. Chapter 19. Months later, spring has finally arrived. The snow has melted, the sun arriving earlier and earlier each day. With the setting this evening, Daniel and Asen are back in the Adventurers Guild, collecting another day's earnings. As usual, Asen is taking care of this, leaving Daniel to wander around the guild hall till she is done. "Liev, what's this?" Daniel points to the appearance of the new board in the guild hall. It's obviously been moved, and after a moment's recollection, Daniel remembers seeing it in the far back corner previously. The board stands to the side of the attendant booths, positioned such that adventurers may peruse the board without blocking access to the booths themselves. "It's the request board. Now that spring's here, we're getting more and more requests for adventurers to help around the town and surrounding villages. We move it up every spring. Since the winter, it's mostly quests for more advanced adventurers," Liev explains, looking up from the papers he is working on. The redhead runs a hand through his hair, messing it up even further as he purses his lips, trying to decipher the handwriting before him. Liev would curse the writer, if the writer was not him. Instead, he reminds himself to take notes with more care. As Liev finishes speaking, Asen comes up next to Daniel and hands him his share silently, before joining Daniel in staring at the board. It takes her a moment to let out a chuff and turn back to licking at the black fur on top of her hands. Having received his answer, Daniel turns back to the board in more detail, with renewed interest. The board itself is split into 4 parts, with a carving above each portion indicating the type of request it was, with a simple rating system consisting of the guild's seal beneath each portion in ascending order of difficulty. A single seal meant the quest was suitable for beginner adventurers, with up to 4 stamps being the highest on the current board. That consisted of a request to hunt a manticore, which had taken residence in the borderlands near a village. The 4 categories showcased were for hunt, supply, and guard quests, with a final miscellaneous section that currently consists of numerous scouting and exploration requests. Each individual quest had a written portion that detailed the quest and a simply drawn image below it for those who couldn't read, allowing most adventurers a quick idea of what each quest entailed. Daniel quickly relays his findings to Asen, who nods her head at the words before pointing to the hunt and, with a slight hesitation, supply portions of the board. Preference offered, Daniel turns back to the board to search for an appropriate question. After spending the entire winter working the dungeon, a change of pace was called for. "Liev, what's the circle for?" Daniel points to a notation that he has spotted that appears more regularly on the supply side than hunt sections. "Repeatable quests. Most unique quests require a deposit by the adventurer and have a time limit. The repeatable ones don't, since multiple adventurers can work on them at the same time. Most of those quests are from traders looking for new material, though the guard, of course, have their regular bounties on orcs, goblins, and kobolds," Liev clarifies. "These 2 are in the north of Karlak and are around the same area, I think. 40 silver each." Daniel points, and Asen looks up for a brief moment, considering the pieces of paper, before an eloquent shrug provides her answer. Daniel sighs, having gotten used to his ever-eloquent nature of his friend and party member after many weeks of working with her. He pulls the papers down and walks over to Liev. A change of pace would be nice after being stuck on the 5th floor for weeks, crawling through passageways and fighting the same monsters again and again. Twice before, the 2 had attempted the 6th floor out of frustration, and both times they had found fighting on that floor too difficult. The behemoth crawlers that inhabited the floor were not only larger than their upper-floor brethren, their armor was significantly tougher, and it took both adventurers working until exhaustion to kill even one. "That's 40 silver, then." Liev takes the 2 papers, glad for the momentary distraction from his paperwork, and looks at Daniel, whose jaw has dropped. Liev just smiles, knowing the two adventurers between them have enough. They did just pay them out for the day. Grumbling to himself, Daniel casts a beseeching look to Asen, who hands over her portion too, before they receive confirmation that they are now assigned to the requests with a 3-day completion requirement. "This is rather nice, isn't it?" Daniel makes conversation the next morning as they head out of the north gate. Asen provides unspoken agreement by running ahead of him and then squatting down to grab a handful of newly bloomed flowers in her hands, the yellow and pink flowers contrasting with her black fur. She sniffs them and then slides one into her brooch before offering the other to Daniel. A shake of his head makes her wrinkle her nose, her whiskers bouncing around at the motion before she drops the flower and joins Daniel as he walks. "So, we've got to find a shadow cat and an owl bear that have come too close to town and are threatening the farmers in the area," Daniel muses before glancing at his companion. "Do you have any tracking skills?" Asen pauses, tilting her head up, and then sniffs disdainfully at Daniel and continues on. "Is that a yes?" Daniel queries, and, not getting an answer, hurries up to catch up with her. He's hoping that's a yes. It is a 40 silver deposit they've put down already, and while he has some minor experience in the woods himself, he would not call himself a tracker. When he asks again, all he gets is silence, so he lets the topic drop. The rest of the walk is finished in companionable silence, both parties enjoying the nice change of pace as the spring sun shines down on them, with just the barest hint of cold in the air from the night before. The pair have walked for hours, taking them from the outskirts of the city where farmers work towards the edge of the settled lands that border Karlak. Here, gently rolling hills dotted with large farms worked by dedicated farmers have transformed into smaller farms where pioneers work to build their lives. Many of the farms in this part of the world are small, the space between each farm large, and most are threadbare in their fittings with a single building. Many of these farmers would have stabled their animals in their houses themselves, both as a safety precaution and to add additional heat to their dwellings. Now, with the snow gone, they are hard at work felling new trees for fences, wood, and just to extend their plots. This is where the quest says the cat was last seen. Daniel gestures around the forest, which just gets another disdainful sniff from Asen. Using the map provided by Liev at the guild and his mapping proficiency, Daniel has been able to guide them to the appropriate spot unerringly. Asen prowls away from Daniel, walking in a slow circle as she stares at the ground and occasionally sniffs at the air, taking over now that they are close to the monster. Daniel sighs and falls silent, letting her get to work as he pulls his shield off his back. It's a few minutes later when she gestures for him to follow. The two begin walking into the woods, Daniel following after Asen, when she turns and points to his feet and then her ears, hissing at him in disapproval. Daniel grimaces and tries to walk quieter, though the glare he gets from absolutely silent Catkin tells him how well he is doing. After a few hours, Daniel realizes there is a reason why these quests paid so well. Spending hours tramping through the woods not killing anything was significantly less interesting than the dungeon itself. For adventurers who craved excitement and adventure, tramping through the undergrowth was less than rewarding. Thankfully, Asen seems to know what she is doing, or at least she seems extremely confident to Daniel as she follows a trail that only she is able to see. Unfortunately for them, a certain city dweller's heavy feet have given their prey more than sufficient warning. The shadow cat has doubled back, crawling up a large oak tree and crouched on it, waiting for its prey to arrive. Watching the two cross below it, the cat makes the decision to attack the larger of the two and launches itself from its perch, smashing into Daniel with its claws. One claw catches on Daniel's shield, the other on his armor, as the beast knocks him to the ground. Claws rip into him, and a paw rises to finish the foolish adventurer. The paw never completes its journey, a thrown knife slamming into the fast-moving limb. Hurt and angered, the cat shifts to snarl at its new assailant, which gives Daniel enough time and leverage to throw it off his body with a heave. Rolling back onto his knees, Daniel throws a clumsy and hasty swipe of his mace to force the cat to back off. The cat lands on its injured paw, hissing in pain as the blade drives deeper, and Daniel is able to stand fully and bring his shield up on guard, bloodied but alive. The cat lets out a low, rumbling growl, assessing the two creatures before it, taking careful steps backward into the shadows that surround the trees above it. A second knife tumbles through the air, but the cat is gone, fading into the shadows before their eyes. Daniel moves to place a nearby tree to his back, shield held up to guard himself, and Asen moves to join him, both adventurers awaiting the next attack. No attacks come, and after a time, Daniel squats to begin healing the deep cuts in his back and across the back of his head as Asen moves around the clearing carefully to see if she can pick up traces of the creature. When Daniel has finished healing himself, she beckons him over, pointing to the trail of blood that she has found. Together, the two follow the trail, eyes peeled for danger. After an hour of careful navigation, they come across a slow-moving river where the trail stops. Snarling in anger, Asen moves up and down the river and even crosses it, attempting to pick up the trail again, but is unable to do so. The cat is gone, and hours of further searching yields no further result. Disappointed, they make camp for the evening, and realizing that they no longer have a lead, decide to switch targets to the owlbear. Perhaps the cat will make itself known while they deal with the owlbear. Chapter 20. The owlbear's lair is a simple cave hidden in a depression surrounded by trees, the perfect place for the creature to have found. Outside, there are scattered bones from its recent meals of stolen sheep and larger bones of a bear, the cave's former occupant. For a time, the pair of adventurers watch the owlbear's cave to ensure the monster is alone before ascertaining their plan. Of course, since neither are tactical geniuses, their plan is simplistic in the utmost. Daniel moves to the depression, shield and mace at the ready. Once he's set, he strikes the mace against his shield boss, drawing the creature out. The strikes are loud in the forest, drawing the ire of the monster. When the owlbear lumbers out, Daniel pales at the sight of the 9-foot-tall feathered monstrosity whose front limbs end in paws instead of eagle claws. Yet the humanoid body structure and face itself is that of a bear, with only vestigial wings at its back. As the owlbear roars, daggers flash forward one after the other to sink into the creature's flesh. The blades are targeted to the creature's softer underbelly, the owlbear's tiny inset eyes too difficult to throw for the hidden Asen. Instead, she goes for quantity over quality, injuring the creature and distracting it as Daniel rushes forward. Ducking beneath the first paw strike, Daniel targets a knife that is stuck in the creature's body and drives it deeper with his blow. He keeps moving, getting out of range of the return attack, forcing the owlbear to turn to chase him. Another knife flashes out, taking the creature in the back, but failing to draw its attention away from Daniel. Daniel ducks the first lurching strike and blocks the second on his shield, using the opening to smash against the claw. The owlbear hisses, ducking forwards with its head to bite Daniel. Fetid breath from rotting flesh stuck in its teeth misses Daniel by inches as Daniel ducks to the side, swinging a backhand strike to the creature's muzzles. The combatants are too close for thrown weapons now, so Asen instead rushes forwards on silent feet and launches herself with daggers extended, landing on the monster's back and allowing her own clawed feet and daggers to dig into the monster. The creature roars in anger and rears back, the owlbear's claws unable to reach its new assailant as it attempts to reach back. Daniel matches the roar, raising his mace high to smash down with all his strength on the creature's exposed chest. The owlbear's bones are surprisingly brittle, and Daniel's mace sinks deep into the creature's chest. The unexpected lack of resistance forces Daniel off balance for a brief moment, and a rotating claw catches him high up on his shoulder, ripping muscles and tendons apart as Daniel loses grip of his weapon. Daniel stumbles away, catching the next strike by reflex on his shield, but is sent sprawling to the ground. Behind, Asen uses the dagger to repeatedly stab the monster in its neck, who gurgles as blood rushes into its throat. In a desperate attempt to kill at least one of its assailants, it stomps down at Daniel, who rolls away, the attack tearing his back open. Strength finally gone, the owlbear collapses forwards, forcing Asen to throw herself into a roll to escape harm. Daniel groans, lying on his back, and focusing on healing his wounds with his mana. The monster's claws were sharp, and the creature strong, shredding the hardened leather armor on his back as if it was paper. "Why am I the one who always gets hit?" Asen does her version of a laugh, chuffing as she takes the loot from the monster. She points to herself as she finishes pocketing the mana stone and claws. "Fast, smart." Her hands come up to point at Daniel, and she finishes. "Strong, slow." Daniel snorts, rotating his shoulder as he finishes healing, and stands up. "You're just using me as a meat shield." She chuffs more, and then points back into the woods before continuing. "Cat?" Daniel nods, heading back to their backpacks. "Yeah, though I think we need a new plan." She nods in agreement, jade eyes narrowing as she remembers the shadow cat had counterstalked them and managed to run away even with one of her daggers in its paw. She really liked that dagger, too. A couple of days later, the two are standing in the guild hall, handing in the claws of the owl beast as proof of their success. They are dejected, however, their various plans to deal with the shadow cat, from using bait to laying crudely built traps, a failure. It is only on the last day, when they are headed back, do they hear of a good lead, but by then it is too late. Only once more did they come across a pair of tracks, but Asen had waved them off, fearing that the creature was likely luring them to a trap again. "Cat got the better of you?" Leif chuckles softly, handing them their pay and half their deposit back. The glum nods makes Leif chuckle. "It's okay, those things are tough. Really, rangers are the only ones who stand a chance fighting those cats." "You could have told us that earlier." Daniel mentally groans, but when he takes the coins, he has to smile at the new pop-up. Quest completed. Hunt the owlbear, 1 out of 1, 2,000 XP received. Level up. Adventurer, level 5. You have gained 5 attribute points. As the happy purr from Asen attests, she probably received the same quest completion. Well, Daniel thinks, there might be at least one other reason to complete quests. With a little bit of time on his hands, Daniel walks into the training grounds for the first time in months, marveling at how little the grounds had changed in the intervening period. The same old smell of sweating bodies, oil, and metal filled the air, and the same grunts and occasional groans of pain or frustration. He waves to Litzburn, who breaks out into a wide smile before making a last few comments to his current students before walking to Daniel. They share a quick hand clasp, Litzburn eyeing his old student with practiced eyes. Daniel had put on even more muscles than before, though the way he held himself spoke of a better sense of his own body as well. The slight tilt of his body to where the combatants were told of a new wariness the novice youngster had lacked. Overall, Litzburn was satisfied. The young man was coming along well. Of course, he couldn't let the youngster know that. "You need a haircut." Chuckling, Daniel runs a hand through his brown mop of hair and nods. "Yeah, gotta get that done." "Well, go get ready then." Litzburn pushes him to the walls where the training weapons are. "Floor 3. Daniel nods happily, hurrying off to get the training gear. When he arrives back on the floor, he's surprised to see Litzburn casually stretching, light glinting off his oiled, bald head. For a moment, Daniel feels trepidation, before he grins, realizing this was a great chance to see how far he had come. The moment Litzburn nods his readiness, Daniel launches an attack, stepping forwards and using double strike. Litzburn blocks the first, dodges the second, and has to skip backwards slightly to avoid the shield bash that comes his way next. Daniel does not let up, pushing the tempo of the fight to keep the more experienced fighter off balance. Litzburn continues to block each strike with the minimum of motion, batting Daniel's mace aside and forcing wider and wider strikes before he lunges, having created the opening he was looking for. Struck full in the chest, Daniel stumbles back, breath forced from his body. "Hold!" Daniel nods in thanks, getting his breath back as Litzburn walks forward. "Good. You're faster and stronger, and you kept up the training yourself, didn't you? Your basics are solid." Daniel grumbles. "Didn't hit you, though." "No. You're too direct, no real feints. That's fine against dumb monsters, but against smarter opponents, you need to create the openings you need." Watching Daniel, he continues. "There are two major kinds of feints, movement and attack feints. You can feint by committing to a movement and then shifting." Litzburn showcases it, shifting his weight to the front foot, his entire body angling to the right before bouncing to the left. "Or you can feint an attack, forcing the opponent to create an opening. Feints are all about making the opponent move, but they don't work if you aren't seen to commit. A feinted attack should feel like a real attack." Litzburn's lips twist in wry amusement. "Or you can just attack and change it midway like Mary." Daniel absorbs the information in silence before raising his mace. Litzburn steps back and they begin. Almost bored, Litzburn adds as they fight, "Don't fall into a pattern either, especially if using your special attacks. A smart opponent will see it and do something like this." Litzburn blocks the shield bash and then wraps Daniel's shield and arm with his own before Daniel can pull back. A quick step puts Litzburn inside Daniel's defense even as he begins to pull Daniel downwards, stretching the shorter adventurer over his knee. Free hand raised, it flashes towards Daniel's neck and stops at the last moment, completing the demonstration. "Now, let's begin again." Chapter 21. "This way!" Kyra pulls on Daniel's arm, dragging him down the pathway, blonde hair flowing in the wind. He smiles, enjoying the view as the elf in the light summer dress hurries along, wind pushing the dress against her body, hugging her full curves. It is a touch chilly, a last-minute frost the night before, slowly thawing in the spring sun. "Come on, Kyra," Daniel laughs, shaking his head. "You told me to take a day off, and now you're dragging me around. It's not like I don't mind taking a day off, but couldn't we spend some time actually resting?" She snorts, turning around and waiting for him to catch up before kissing him on his nose. "Sex later." Daniel blushes slightly, still uncomfortable by the frank way Kyra deals with certain topics. "I didn't mean that." "Of course you didn't," she grins, pulling him on. "Anyway, the only reason you agreed to come was because Asen refused to work again today. I believe she eloquently put it as you being work-stupid." Looking ahead, all that Daniel can see as a potential destination is a small hut at the end of the curved pathway, the only structure among the rolling green hills that they traverse. He ignores hers and Asen's pointed comments, knowing they were correct and that he could get a touch focused at times. However, they just needed to level up, and then maybe they'd be able to deal with the next floor. Just a little bit more. "Are you really not going to tell me what this is about?" "Patience!" As they near the hut, Daniel notes that the clothing line outside seems to be built on a small pulley to raise and lower it. The hut itself looks to be relatively well kept, no obvious holes, and the thatched roof recently redone. Kyra does not wait to knock on the door, instead stepping in directly. The inside of the hut is a contrast to the neat external, and is a complete mess, tables filling up every inch of space and laden down with a wide array of items, shields, swords, maces, jewelry, and more. In a rare, clear space on the table in the center of the room, a series of etching tools and a small beaker sit, containers filled with copper, silver, and gold dust next to it.
"Kyra, lass, you made it,"
a low voice rumbles from the kitchen, soon followed by its owner. The dwarf whose residence this is comes out from the kitchen holding a frying pan, wearing an apron, full brown beard braided to remove itself from danger. Brown eyes twinkle as he hefts the pan, slabs of heavenly-smelling bacon roasting on it, setting Daniel's starving stomach clenching. "Tarek boy, I told you I'd be here today," Kyra says, stepping into the hut and pointing behind to Daniel. "This is Daniel, he's a friend." "Tarek, that smells amazing," Daniel greets and then angles for an invitation. Tarek laughs, leading the way into the kitchen.
"Come, there's more than enough for everybody."
A short 30 minutes later, Daniel is patting his stomach, having stuffed himself. Tarek was definitely a very good cook, better, he would say, than even Elise, though he knew better to ever say that. "That was wonderful, Tarek, thank you. I'm now glad Kyra dragged me out here."
"A friend of the lass is a friend of mine,"
Tarek grins, standing up to begin putting away the dishes.
"Even if he's stolen her away from me."
Daniel blanches and shoots a look at Kyra, who just smiles blandly at him. Tarek seems to be missing the awkwardness his words have created, coming back and offering a plate of cake.
"Cake?"
"Ah." Daniel stares at the cake and then shrugs, taking the plate. "Thank you."
"The lass says you've been having trouble with the 6th floor?"
Tarek mentions around his mouthful of cake. Kyra stays silent, savoring her own piece as she lets the two talk. "Yes, the behemoth crawlers are just too strong. We can kill one, but it takes forever, and if there are two, we just have to run away," Daniel grumbles, waving his fork around. "There's always a few of them in a nest at a time, and I don't even want to think what the boss is like."
"The crawlers are horrible. Tough carapace, makes it nearly impossible to smash through or stab. Most adventurers have to level up a few times or party up enough to beat the floor. Kyra says you're too impatient for that, though. Got places to be and all that," Tarek says.
"Well, Daniel grimaces, shrugging his shoulders.
"Young."
Tarek laughs heartily and points to the front of his hut and his workshop as he finishes up his cake.
"All right, I got something that can help. You and your catkin."
Walking past Daniel, he pushes the adventurer down as he tries to stand up to follow. A few minutes later, Tarek returns with 2 pairs of bracers with etchings inlaid in copper on them.
"Normally I don't work with so low materials these days, but I couldn't say no to Kyra."
"What are they?" Daniel picks one up, frowning at the etchings. There's something about the bracers, a feeling of power that he can sense at the edges of his perception. He extends his senses a bit further, feeling the bracers through his mana, and realizing that the bracers seem to contain and hold mana themselves. These are enchanted. Lesser Braces of Lightning. Effect: when worn, braces add 3 to 5 points of lightning damage per successful attack, 5% chance to stun, resisted by magic resistance. Durability: 30 out of 30. Item class: enchanted. Quality: excellent. +2 to enchantment damage.
"Well, I am an enchanter."
Tarek gestures to the bracers before him, smiling slightly in pride.
"These are enchanted with lightning magic. If you wear them, your aura will be imbued with lightning magic itself, and each of your attacks will do a small portion of lightning damage. The crawlers themselves are susceptible, so you'll be able to kill them a lot easier."
Daniel's grin widens even further as he caresses the bracers. "Thank you."
"You are very welcome. I'll also need 12 gold for the bracer sets,"
Tarek states. Daniel's jaw drops open, the sheer amount staggering. A thrifty man could survive on a single gold for a year. 12 was a fortune.
"Each."
Suddenly, the heavenly brunch he ate feels like lead in his stomach. He had been earning a decent amount for a while now, but still. I don't have that much.
Of course not. Just give the money to Kyra when you can. I trust you.
Kyra just smiles, raising her cup as Daniel reels from the news. This was his first enchanted item, but for so much. He pushes down the feelings of trepidation. He always knew that being an adventurer was an expensive proposition. It seemed it was time for him to truly decide. Would he strive for the top, or become just another low-tier adventurer, working small-time dungeons and earning enough to have a comfortable but unexciting life? Put that way, there really is little choice. If Daniel had wanted comfort, he had simpler, easier options. Thank you. I'll repay you as soon as I can. We will. Unable to stop himself, Daniel quickly straps the bracers on. The moment both are equipped, a surge of energy ripples through him, invading his aura. Concentrating, he can feel the flickers of lightning mana that is now imbued into his aura, stretching forth to cover him. As he picks up a fork, he can feel how it flows down even to the fork, charging it with a slight measure of the lightning mana and his own aura. The two old friends just watch as he plays with his new toy, sharing knowing smiles. Mrs. Harth, what did we say about overdoing it? Daniel grumbles, raising the elderly woman's arm to inspect it again, and then letting it drop later that evening. The octogenarian cackles for a moment before wincing in pain. Young man, at my age, you take what time you get and make full use of it. Snorting, Daniel sighs and reaches out with his gift, slowly reknitting the torn tendons and muscles in the shoulder. Healing in this way was old hat to Daniel by now, though with Kyra's guidance, he had learned to use less power, making smaller adjustments to allow the body's natural healing abilities to take over. However, his biggest gains in skill were when he helped the diseased and the elderly, their various ailments and illnesses outside of his previous experience in the mining camps. The hard life of the camp was no place for the weak or elderly, so what he mostly treated were injuries, not the common ailments he dealt with now. Finished with the old woman, he sends her out before turning to Kyra, who has wandered in. After exchanging a quick kiss, she announces, "That's it for the day. Thank you for coming in with me, Daniel. I felt bad about taking the morning off." Daniel just nods, accepting the thanks gracefully. It wasn't exactly what he would consider a rest day, but who was he to complain? Kyra, one question. I've noticed some of the patients, well, they seem to refuse to go to you. He gestures to the now empty waiting room. Not refuse. They're just more comfortable with you, Kyra explains, looking over to the youngster. Right. Daniel's eyes narrow before he flinches as Kyra punches him in the arm. Don't, she warns him, and he sighs, nodding. No point making a fuss about it, even if their actions just made no sense. As his grandfather pointed out, fools would be fools. Still, he might make those wait a little longer next time and use more traditional methods with them. No point in wasting his gift for those— Ow! I said don't. Kyra holds her fist up, glaring at Daniel, before he nods quickly. No fuss, no fuss. Good. I much prefer being hit. Kyra grins lasciviously at the suddenly blushing Daniel. He still rejoins, however. You do you?